I never planned to fall for my roommate. That's the kind of cliché that happens in movies, not real life. But here I am, about to tell you the most intense, unexpected, and life-changing story of my 24 years on this planet. Started 6 months ago when I moved to Seattle for a job at a tech startup. The rent in the city was astronomical, so I did what every reasonable broke millennial does. I found a roommate on Craigslist. Enter Jake Morrison, 6'2" ex-college baseball player, with sandy blonde hair that somehow looked perfect even when he just rolled out of bed. He worked in construction management, and had the kind of easy confidence that made everyone around him relax. Our first meeting was casual. He showed me the apartment, a two-bedroom corner unit with exposed brick and huge windows overlooking Pike Place Market. The place was immaculate for a straight guy living alone. No pizza boxes, no mystery smells, just clean counters and a well-organized bookshelf featuring an alarming number of Tom Clancy novels. "So, ground rules," Jake had said, leaning against the kitchen counter with his arms crossed. "I'm pretty chill, have friends over whenever, just text if you're bringing someone back, overnight," he'd grinned. "Try to keep it down if you do." I'd laughed awkwardly because I definitely wasn't planning on bringing anyone back. I'd just gotten out of a relationship with Marcus, my boyfriend of 2 years, and I was firmly in my focusing on my career era. Plus, I wasn't out to everyone yet. My family knew, my close friends knew, but I'd learned to read the room with new people. Jake hadn't asked and I hadn't told him, not because I was ashamed, but because I'd learned that coming out was exhausting. You do it over and over again with every new person you meet and you never know how they'll react. Some people are cool, others get weird, and some, the worst kind, act like they're cool but then slowly distance themselves. So I moved in and we fell into an easy rhythm. Jake would make coffee in the morning, always leaving some for me. I'd cook dinner most nights because he lived on protein shakes and chicken breast, and I genuinely enjoyed experimenting with recipes. We'd watch games together. I pretended to understand football while secretly Googling the rules on my phone. He'd tell me about his job site drama. I'd complain about my passive-aggressive project manager. It was comfortable, easy, safe. And then slowly, I started noticing things I shouldn't have been noticing. It happened gradually, like slowly turning up the temperature on a stove until suddenly everything's boiling over. First, it was just appreciation. Jake was objectively attractive, anyone with eyes could see that. He had this habit of walking around shirtless after his morning runs, his chest still glistening with sweat, and I'd find myself staring at my coffee a little too intently. He'd stretch before bed, his shirt riding up to reveal a strip of toned stomach and that V-line that should honestly be illegal. But I could handle that. Attraction was one thing. You can be attracted to someone without it meaning anything. Then came the emotional intimacy, which was far more dangerous. Like the night Jake came home after his dad was hospitalized with a heart attack. He'd been stoic at first, just texting me that he'd be at the hospital. But when he came home at 2 in the morning, I was still up, working on a presentation. He'd sat down on the couch next to me and I'd seen his hands shaking. "He's okay," Jake had said quietly. "They did the surgery, he's going to be okay." "That's great," I'd replied, closing my laptop. That must have been terrifying. And then Jake had done something unexpected. He'd leaned his head on my shoulder. Just for a moment, this big, strong guy letting himself be vulnerable. My heart had hammered in my chest, but I'd stayed still, letting him take what he needed. "Thanks for being here," he'd whispered. After that night, something shifted. Jake started seeking me out more, asking my opinion on things, texting me funny memes during the day, insisting we do a weekly movie night. He'd throw his arm around my shoulders when we watched TV, casual and friendly, not knowing that every touch felt like electricity through my skin. I was in trouble and I knew it. The turning point came on a random Tuesday in October. Jake had been seeing this girl, Melissa, for a few weeks. She was nice enough, a nurse with a great laugh and the kind of effortless beauty that made me irrationally jealous. He'd brought her over for dinner and I'd played the role of the cool, supportive roommate, making my famous pasta carbonara and then excusing myself early to catch up on work. I'd lain in bed, noise-canceling headphones on, trying not to think about what was happening in Jake's room down the hall. It was torture. Not just the jealousy, but the loneliness of it all, hiding this huge part of myself, pretending I didn't feel what I felt, playing straight in my own home. Around midnight, I'd heard Melissa leave, then a soft knock on my door. "Hey," Jake had said, poking his head in, "you still up?" "Yeah, just reading." I gestured to the book I definitely wasn't processing. "Cool if I hang for a bit?" He hadn't waited for an answer, just flopped down on my bed like it was the most natural thing in the world. Melissa's great, but man, she talks a lot about her hospital drama. I needed a break. We'd ended up talking for 2 hours about everything and nothing, our weird childhoods, our dreams, our fears. At some point, Jake had said something that made my breath catch. You know what I like about you, man, you're just real, like I don't have to perform around you, I can just be myself. I'd wanted to laugh at the irony. Here he was, praising me for being authentic while I was hiding the biggest part of who I was. That's when I knew I had to tell him, not because I expected anything to happen between us, I wasn't delusional, but because I was tired of the lie, tired of the performance. If our friendship meant anything, it had to be built on honesty. Except I didn't get the chance to tell him on my own terms. It was a Saturday morning, 3 weeks after that late-night conversation. I'd gone for a run and left my phone charging on the kitchen counter. When I got back, sweaty and exhausted, Jake was sitting on the couch with a strange expression on his face. "Hey," I said, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge, "what's up?" "Your phone was blowing up," Jake said slowly. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the messages kept appearing on the lock screen and I saw. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my phone and saw the notifications. My friend Tyler had sent me a string of messages about a guy he wanted to set me up with, complete with photos and way too much explicit commentary about said guy's physical attributes. The messages were pretty clearly gay, undeniably so. I looked at Jake and his face was unreadable, not angry, not disgusted, just processing. "I can explain," I started, which was stupid because what was there to explain? "You're gay," Jake said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. My heart was racing so fast I could hear it in my ears. This was it, the moment where everything changed, where he'd either be cool or he'd get weird and I'd have to find a new place to live and this perfect little life I'd built would crumble. "How long were you going to wait to tell me?" Jake asked finally. "I don't know," I admitted. "I was going to, I never knew how." "Did you think I'd be a dick about it or something?" "I didn't know, Jake, you're this straight guy who talks about sports and dates women and we've built this whole friendship and I didn't want to make it weird." "Make it weird?" Jake stood up and I instinctively took a step back, but he wasn't angry, his voice was hurt. "Dude, I've told you about my dad's heart surgery, about how I failed out of my first semester of college, about the time I got so drunk I cried in a Denny's parking lot at 3 a.m. You think you being gay would make things weird?" "People react differently when it's about being gay," I said quietly, "trust me." Jake ran his hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "So what, you've just been lying to me for 6 months?" "Not lying, just not mentioning it." "That's semantics, man, we're supposed to be friends." "We are friends." "Are we?" Jake challenged, "because friends don't hide shit like this, friends trust each other." That stung because he was right. I'd been so focused on protecting myself that I hadn't considered that my silence might hurt him too. "You're right," I said, my throat tight. "I'm sorry, I should have told you." Jake sat back down, his head in his hands. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked up at me. And his expression was softer. "Is this why you've been weird lately?" "Weird how?" "I don't know, distant, like you're always holding something back." I couldn't tell him the real reason I'd been distant, that I'd been fighting feelings for him that I had no right to have, so I just nodded. "Yeah, it's exhausting hiding part of yourself." "Then stop hiding," Jake said simply. "I don't care that you're gay, man, I care that you didn't trust me enough to tell me." The next few days were awkward as hell. Not because Jake was being weird about the gay thing, he genuinely didn't seem to care, but there was this new tension between us, a kind of guardedness that hadn't been there before. He'd go to his room earlier, I'd make excuses to work late at the office. We were two people circling each other, trying to figure out the new normal. On Wednesday, I came home to find Jake in the kitchen, stress cooking his signature dish, scrambled eggs with way too much cheese. "We need to talk," he said, not looking at me. Here it comes, I thought, he's going to ask me to move out. "Okay," I said, setting down my bag. "This is stupid," Jake said, aggressively whisking eggs. "This whole thing is stupid. We had a good thing going and I don't want your sexuality to ruin it." "Me neither." "So let's just reset. You're gay, cool, I'm straight, also cool, we're roommates and friends and nothing has to change." Agreed, I said, relief flooding through me. And no more secrets, okay? If something's bothering you, just tell me, I can handle it. Famous last words. Because here's the thing about pretending everything's normal, it only works if your feelings cooperate, and mine absolutely did not cooperate. If anything, things got worse after Jake knew. Because now I didn't have to hide certain things, I could talk about guys I found attractive, could make jokes about being gay, could just exist more fully in the space. But that also meant I was more aware of my feelings for Jake, more conscious of every interaction. Like when he started working out shirtless in the living room and I had to pretend I was fascinated by my phone screen. Or when he'd casually ask me if I thought his date outfit looked good, turning around like he was on a runway, and I had to give objective fashion advice while my brain short-circuited. Or worst of all, when he broke up with Melissa and spent a whole evening on the couch with his head in my lap, talking about how he felt like he was bad at relationships, and I had to stroke his hair and give him pep talks while screaming internally. My friend Tyler noticed during our weekly coffee catch-up. "You're in love with your roommate," he said, way too loudly for a crowded Starbucks. "I'm not in love with him," I hissed. "I just have feelings that I'm managing." "Dude, you just described being in love." "He's straight, Tyler, nothing's going to happen." "Have you asked him if he's straight?" "I don't need to ask, he exclusively dates women, he talks about women he finds hot, he's straight." Tyler had given me this pitying look that I hated. "You should tell him how you feel." "Absolutely not, that's the worst idea in the history of ideas." I tell him, he gets uncomfortable, our friendship is ruined and I have to move out, no thanks. But Tyler had planted a seed of doubt, because there were moments, these little moments, where I wondered if maybe Jake felt something too. It all came to a head on New Year's Eve. We'd planned to go to this rooftop party thrown by one of Jake's coworkers, but at the last minute I'd felt overwhelmed by the idea of watching Jake flirt with random women while I nursed a beer in the corner. So I'd faked a headache and told him to go without me. Jake had seemed disappointed, but he'd gone, and I'd spent the evening alone watching the countdown on TV and feeling sorry for myself. Around 12:30 a.m. my phone rang. Jake's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," I answered, "how's the party?" "Can you come get me?" Jake's voice was slurred, clearly drunk. "I don't want to Uber alone." 20 minutes later, I pulled up outside the building. Jake was sitting on the curb, looking miserable despite the festive chaos around him. "You okay?" I asked as he climbed into the car. "Why didn't you come tonight?" Jake asked instead of answering. "I missed you." "You were surrounded by people, I'm sure you didn't miss me." "But I did." Jake turned to look at me, his eyes intense even through the alcohol haze. "I always miss you when you're not around, is that weird?" My heart was doing dangerous things. "You're drunk." "So drunk words are sober thoughts, right?" "That's not how that works." We drove in silence for a few minutes, then Jake said quietly, "I think I messed up." "What do you mean?" "I've been thinking about what you said, about how exhausting it is to hide part of yourself." "Okay. I think I've been hiding too." I pulled into our parking garage, my hands shaking slightly. "Jake, what are you talking about?" He didn't answer until we were inside the apartment. Then he turned to me, swaying slightly, and said, "I think I like you." The world stopped. "You're drunk," I repeated, but my voice came out as a whisper. "I'm drunk," Jake agreed. "But I still mean it. I've been trying to figure out why I was so hurt that you didn't tell me you were gay, and I think it's because I wanted you to tell me. I wanted you to trust me with that because I want you to trust me with everything." "Jake." "Let me finish." He stepped closer and I could smell the whiskey on his breath. "When you told me, when I found out, my first thought wasn't, oh, he's gay. It was, does this mean I have a chance? How fucked up is that?" I couldn't breathe. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't think I'm as straight as I thought I was. Or maybe I am and you're just the exception, I don't know. All I know is that I think about you all the time. I get jealous when you talk about other guys. I find excuses to touch you. And I know this is probably the worst thing I could say because you're my roommate and my best friend and I'm about to ruin everything, but I kissed him." I couldn't help it. After months of wanting, of holding back, of pretending, he was standing there telling me everything I'd dreamed of hearing and I just acted. For a moment, Jake froze, then he was kissing me back, his hands tangling in my hair, pulling me closer. He tasted like whiskey and something uniquely Jake, and it was everything and nothing like I'd imagined. When we broke apart, we were both breathing hard. "You kissed me," Jake said, eyes wide. "You said you liked me." "I know, but I didn't think you. I mean, I'm your straight roommate, or I was. Am I still straight if I want to do that again?" I laughed, slightly hysterical. "I don't know, do you want to do that again?" "So much." We kissed again, slower this time, and it felt like the world was rearranging itself into a new configuration. When we finally pulled apart, reality started creeping in. "You're drunk," I said. "We should talk about this when you're sober." Jake looked like I'd kicked a puppy. "You're right, but for the record, I'm going to feel the same way tomorrow." "We'll see," I said, not letting myself hope too much. "I will," Jake insisted. He cupped my face with both hands, his expression suddenly serious despite the alcohol. "I've been falling for you for months. I just didn't let myself admit it because I thought I knew who I was supposed to be, but screw that. I'd rather be confused and happy with you than certain and miserable without you." I barely slept that night. I lay in bed, replaying the kiss over and over, terrified that morning would bring regret and awkwardness. At 8 a.m., there was a knock on my door. "Come in," I called, sitting up. Jake entered, looking remarkably good for someone who'd been drunk a few hours ago. He was carrying 2 cups of coffee and an expression I couldn't read. "So," he said, sitting on the edge of my bed, "about last night." My stomach clenched. "Jake, if you want to pretend it didn't happen, we can." "I don't want to pretend it didn't happen." He handed me a coffee. "I want to talk about what happens next." "What do you want to happen next?" Jake took a sip of his coffee, organizing his thoughts. "Here's the thing, I've been awake since 6 thinking about this, about you, about me. And I realized something. I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. Not Melissa, not any of the girls I've dated. And at first I thought maybe that just meant we were really good friends. But then I started paying attention to how I felt when you were around versus when you weren't. How I lit up when you texted me. How I looked forward to coming home because you'd be here. How I felt jealous and possessive when you mentioned other guys. Yeah. My heart was pounding, and those aren't friend feelings, at least not just friend feelings." He set down his coffee and looked at me directly. "I can't promise I know what I'm doing. I've never been with a guy. I don't know if I'm bi or pan or if you're just this one specific exception to every rule I thought I knew about myself. But I know I want to try if you'll have me." I wanted to say yes immediately, but years of self-protection kicked in. "Jake, this is a huge deal. If we try this and it doesn't work out, we can't just go back to being roommates. We'd lose everything." "I know. And what if you decide you're actually straight and this was just curiosity or confusion?" "What if I don't?" Jake countered. "What if this is real and we miss out on something amazing because we're too scared to try? What if you break my heart?" Jake's expression softened. "What if you break mine?" That stopped me because I'd been so focused on protecting myself that I hadn't considered that Jake was taking a risk too. He was questioning his entire sexual identity, potentially upending his life for something that might not work out. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "Me too." Jake reached out and took my hand. "But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you." And really, what was I supposed to say to that? "Okay," I whispered, "let's try." Jake's smile could have powered the entire city. He leaned forward, stopping just short of kissing me. "Is this okay?" "More than okay." This kiss was different from the night before, sober, intentional, full of promise. When we broke apart, Jake rested his forehead against mine. "So what now?" he asked. "Now we figure it out as we go," I said, "together." Dating your roommate is weird. Dating your previously straight roommate who's figuring out his sexuality is even weirder. The first few weeks were a constant negotiation of boundaries and expectations. Jake wanted to tell everyone immediately, excited about this new part of himself. I wanted to keep things private until we were sure it would work out. We compromised. We told our close friends but kept it off social media. Tyler's reaction was priceless. "Called it," he'd screamed when I told him. I knew there was something there. Jake's friends were more surprised but supportive. His best friend Chad had said, "Man, as long as you're happy, I don't care who you're with," though I gotta admit I didn't see this coming. Jake's response, "Me neither, dude, me neither." The physical side of things was a learning curve. Jake had never been with a guy before, and there was a lot of nervous laughter and awkward fumbling before we found our rhythm. But there was also this sweetness to it, this sense of discovery and trust that made every new experience feel special. We had our first real fight about a month in. I'd made a joke about Jake being practically straight since he'd been with women before me and he'd gotten genuinely upset. "Don't do that," he'd said, his voice tight. "Don't minimize what this is for me. I'm not practically straight. I'm figuring out that I might be bi or maybe pan or maybe I don't need a label at all, but this thing between us, it's not less real because I didn't know this about myself before." He was right and I'd apologized. I'd been so worried about him regretting choosing me that I'd been undermining the choice itself. "I know this is new for you," I'd said, "and I'm sorry for making it seem like it's not legitimate." "It's new but it's not wrong," Jake had replied. "You need to trust that I know my own heart." After that, things got easier. We fell into a routine that felt natural, cooking together, falling asleep on the couch during movies, having debates about whether cereal was a soup. Jake's position, yes. My position, absolutely not. We had our first official date night 2 months in. Jake had planned the whole thing, dinner at a nice restaurant followed by a walk through the sculpture park at night. As we walked hand in hand under the stars, he'd stopped and turned to me. "Thank you," he'd said. "For what?" "For being patient with me, for taking a chance on this, for seeing me, all of me, even the parts I didn't know existed." I'd kissed him there under the Seattle sky and felt something settle in my chest. This was real, this was happening, this was my life now. The real test came when Jake's parents visited for Thanksgiving. I'd met them briefly when I first moved in, a quick hello as they helped Jake move some furniture. They'd been friendly but hadn't paid much attention to me beyond basic pleasantries. Now, 3 months into our relationship, Jake wanted to tell them about us. "Are you sure?" I'd asked, anxiety churning in my stomach. "We don't have to rush this." "I'm not going to hide you," Jake had said firmly. "You're important to me, they need to know." The night before they arrived, I barely slept. I kept imagining worst-case scenarios, them demanding Jake break up with me, refusing to accept him, causing a huge family rift. But Jake's parents surprised me. His mom, Linda, figured it out before Jake even said anything. We were all in the kitchen, Jake and I, cooking together with the kind of easy synchronization that comes from months of practice, him passing me ingredients before I asked, me knowing exactly how he liked his coffee. "So," Linda had said, watching us with knowing eyes, "how long have you two been together?" Jake had frozen, spatula midair. "How did you?" "Honey, I'm your mother, I know how you look at people." She'd smiled at me, warm and genuine. "And I've never seen you look at anyone the way you look at him." Jake's dad, Robert, had been more reserved. He'd excused himself to the living room and I'd felt my heart sink. But an hour later he'd pulled Jake aside for a private conversation. When they came back, Jake's eyes were red but he was smiling. "He's okay with it," Jake had whispered to me later. "He said he just needed a minute to adjust his expectations but that he trusts my judgment and wants me to be happy." The rest of the weekend had been surprisingly normal. Linda had asked me about my job, my family, my intentions toward her son, which was mortifying but sweet. Robert had taught us both his famous turkey recipe. We'd played board games and watched football, and I'd felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, like I was part of a family. On their last night, Linda had pulled me aside while Jake and Robert did the dishes. "Thank you for making my son happy," she'd said, squeezing my hand. "I can see how much he loves you." "I love him too," I'd replied, and realized it was the first time I'd said it out loud to anyone but Jake. "I know," she'd smiled. "It's written all over both of your faces." 6 months into our relationship, Jake came home from work with a strange expression on his face. "We need to talk," he said, and my blood ran cold. Those 4 words, the relationship death knell. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Jake sat down next to me on the couch, taking my hands in his. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately, about my sexuality, about labels, about what this all means." Here it comes, I thought. He's figured out he's actually straight. This was all a phase. "And I realized something," Jake continued. "I spent so much time trying to figure out if I'm bi or pan or whatever, trying to find the right label, that I missed the point entirely." "What do you mean?" I mean, maybe I'm bi, maybe I'm pan, maybe I'm straight except for you, but honestly, I don't care anymore, because the label doesn't matter. What matters is that I love you, I'm in love with you, and I don't want to spend another second questioning whether I'm queer enough or whatever to deserve this. I felt tears prickling at my eyes. You love me. I love you, Jake confirmed, his voice steady and sure. I think I've loved you since that night I came home and you stayed up with me, or maybe before that. I don't know when it happened, but I know it's real. I love you too, I said, my voice breaking. I've been in love with you for so long. Jake pulled me into his arms and we stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other. I have something else to tell you, Jake said eventually. More revelations. Just one, he pulled back to look at me. I've been looking at apartments. My heart sank. Oh. No, wait, I'm saying this wrong, Jake laughed nervously. I've been looking at apartments for us, bigger places, because this apartment is great, but I want something that's ours, not just mine, with you as my roommate/boyfriend. I want a place where we pick out furniture together and paint the walls weird colors and build a real home. You want to move in together, officially. We already live together, Jake pointed out. I just want to make it more official, plus. I found this amazing loft in Capitol Hill with a huge kitchen, and I immediately imagined us cooking in it together. I kissed him hard and desperate and full of joy. Yes, yes to all of it. We moved into the loft 2 months later. It was chaos, boxes everywhere, furniture that didn't quite fit, 1,000 decisions about where things should go, but it was our chaos and I loved every minute of it. Jake insisted on carrying me over the threshold, which was ridiculous but also made my heart swell. Welcome home, he'd said, kissing me in the middle of our empty living room. I'm already home, I'd replied. I've been home since the day you told me you liked me. That was 8 months ago. Now we've settled into our life together. We have a home with photos on the walls and plants that I keep alive and Jake's baseball trophies displayed proudly. We host dinners for our friends. We argue about whose turn it is to do dishes. We fall asleep tangled together every night. It's not always easy. Jake still sometimes struggles with being out in certain situations. I still sometimes worry that he'll wake up one day and realize he made a mistake. We're learning to communicate, to trust, to be vulnerable with each other in ways that are both terrifying and beautiful. But we're doing it together. Last week, Jake's coworker made a homophobic comment at a company dinner. I watched Jake's jaw tighten and then he stood up and said clearly and firmly, "That's not cool, man, my boyfriend and I are leaving." He'd taken my hand and we'd walked out together. In the car, I'd asked him if he was okay. "I'm perfect," he'd said. "I just realized something." "What?" "I used to think being straight was just who I was, like it was this fundamental truth. But being with you, this feels more true than anything else in my life. You didn't make me gay or bi or whatever I am. You just helped me see more of who I've always been." So my straight roommate found out I'm gay, and here's what happened. He realized he wasn't as straight as he thought. We fell in love. We built a life together. We're still figuring things out, still learning about ourselves and each other every day. People ask me sometimes if I was scared to take that risk to potentially ruin our friendship by pursuing something more. And yes, I was terrified, but I learned something important through all of this. Sometimes the biggest risk is not taking one at all. Jake taught me that it's never too late to discover new parts of yourself. That sexuality is fluid and complex and doesn't always fit into neat boxes. That love is worth fighting for, especially when it surprises you. And I taught Jake that it's okay to question everything you thought you knew about yourself. That coming out is a journey, not a destination. That authenticity is worth more than certainty. We didn't get the traditional love story. We got something better, a story about two people who were brave enough to be honest about who they are and what they wanted, who were willing to risk everything for the chance at something real. Is it perfect? No. Are there still challenges? Absolutely. Does Jake sometimes miss the simplicity of identifying as straight? Probably. Do I sometimes worry about the future? All the time. But every morning I wake up next to the person I love. Every evening I come home to someone who sees me, all of me, and chooses me anyway. Every day we build our life together, brick by brick, decision by decision, kiss by kiss. My straight roommate found out I'm gay, and it changed both of our lives. And I wouldn't change a single thing. 3 years later update. I'm writing this from the couch in our loft where Jake is currently arguing with a piece of IKEA furniture that he insists he can assemble without the instructions. Some things never change. But some things do. Last month, Jake proposed. We were at the same sculpture park where we had our first official date, and he got down on one knee right there under the stars. He was nervous and rambling and perfect, and obviously I said yes. We're getting married next spring. His parents are helping us plan. My parents, who took a little longer to come around but eventually did, are hosting the engagement party. Tyler is going to be my best man and Chad is going to be Jake's. People tell us we're lucky, and we are incredibly lucky. But it wasn't just luck that got us here. It was courage and honesty and a willingness to be vulnerable even when it was scary. It was choosing love over fear. So if you're reading this and you're hiding part of yourself, whether it's your sexuality, your feelings for someone, or any other truth that feels too scary to speak out loud, I want you to know something. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be loved for exactly who you are. And the people who are meant to be in your life will stick around when you show them your authentic self. It might not happen the way you expect. Your straight roommate might not turn out to be straight at all. Your carefully built walls might crumble in the best possible way. Your life might take a turn you never saw coming. But isn't that what makes it worth living? Jake just successfully assembled the shelf without instructions. He's very proud.